everyone. Welcome to the Veteran in Business and Entrepreneurship, or VIBE for short, to our first ever event. My name is Heath Jordan, and this year I have the honor and privilege of being the president of VIBE. VIBE was founded in February of this year by Taylor Holtzhauser. Taylor is now a TCU alum, and we wouldn't be here tonight without his efforts, so we wanted to say a very big thank you to him. I'd also like to thank our VIBE officers for their dedication during these unprecedented times and throughout this semester. Our Vice President, Michael DeGama, Treasurer, Christian Jenkins, Secretary, Nikki Elizondo, and our recruiter, Max Muscat. So who exactly are we? The purpose of VIBE is to focus on networking, professional development, and academic success and entrepreneurial goals of veterans and veteran-friendly communities on campus. We look forward to continuing to engage with TCU veterans and all students and faculty on campus in the future. Before we begin our discussion tonight, we'd like to ask a few requests from the audience. Although we're not able to be in person in this event due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we ask that you please turn on your cameras for better engagement for the audience. And to prevent accidental interruptions, we will keep you muted throughout this event. And next, we would like to ask that if you have a question, would like a follow-up or need clarification, we will have a live chat box going throughout the discussion. There's also a blue hand feature you may use to bump yourself to the front during this time. Please enter any queries you have or may have, and we will try to get them answered to the best of our ability. Now, let's begin by introducing our panel this evening. Panelists, you can introduce yourself. Sorry.
All right, well, I am Robert Sims. I am a retired Air Force veteran, and I am now a Texas realtor, and thank you for having me on this panel.
I'll go next. My name's Matt Griffin. I go by Griff. Former Army guy. I was with the 2nd Ranger Battalion from 2001 to 2006. I got out of the Army, and then I did a bunch of jobs, and I co-founded, and I'm now the CEO of Combat Flip Flops.
Hi, Griff. This is Christina Guerrero. I'm so excited to see you. Finally, I knew you looked familiar. I'm Christina Guerrero. I started a company called Turbo Pup, and I met Griff on the way to doing that. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for what you guys do to serve veterans.
All right, well, thank you all very much. We appreciate you being here. I guess we'll just go ahead and get this started without further ado. Is there any panelist that has a preference, wants to go first, or you want me to go ahead and just choose the lucky one?
Your choice, dealer's choice.
All right, let's kick it off with Mr. Sims, Realtor Rob. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, awesome. So we had some questions that people submitted when they were registering for this event, and then we've also just got some questions of our own. So I guess the first thing we wanted to ask you was just how exactly has COVID impacted your business and the housing market in general over the last 8 months or so, just since we've been kind of dealing with this crisis?
Well, surprisingly enough, it hasn't really slowed it down any, as far as, these are all my, personal experiences. It is more of a seller's market now. So meaning that, there are more buyers than there are houses for sale. So I guess in that instance, the sellers kind of have the upper hand a little bit. You come into a scenario where you have multiple offers on your property, which is good for them, and the buyers, they have to come with their best and first. They can't try to negotiate. I mean, they can, but I mean, not if they really want it. They have to go in with their best foot forward. But what I do to I guess deal with the COVID is I have my little sanitation wipes that I go in prior to doing showings, and I wipe down all the high touch surface areas like the door handles and light switches and things like that before my clients even enter the home. So they anything that they have to touch. So that's how it's kind of affected me, you know.
Okay, great, thank you. That's kind of surprising. I think like most people would be surprised that it's turned it into a bit of a seller's market, I guess.
Yes.
But yeah, thanks for that insight, definitely. And then I guess since all of us, you know, this is a veterans majority organization, a lot of people are interested just exactly how the military kind of prepares you for starting a business or just kind of prepares you for an entrepreneurship type career. So how would you say the military kind of prepared you for your career that you're in now?
Well, I guess the typical answers would be like the discipline and the self motivation. You do have to. I think it prepared me by being flex. Just like the market is, you know, changing now, dealing with this. You know, you have to be quick to adapt to it, or you know, you may not last. You know, you have to be able to wear different hats. You know, some days you're a counselor because they need to vent because they're going through the, I guess, backside, if you will, that you know have nothing to do with buying a house, but you know their mental, you know, all the time. So you have to be aware of that as well. You have to get them to see the bigger picture. You know, like I was saying earlier, you know, if you want a house, you know, you have to go in and you know you might only get one shot. You have to put your best foot forward and you know offer like you do want it. You know, not low.
Okay. Hey Rob, I'm sorry to cut you off. I think we're having some audio trouble right now. Give it a sec, see if you
I can hear you fine.
hear me
I can hear
fine.
you fine.
Okay. Well, let's give him a second. I guess we could just, yeah, we'll go ahead and pivot. Maybe he's losing connection or something like that. Well, Griff, can we move to you just until we get him back? Maybe we can come back to that, circle back.
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. Well, how about so you mentioned when you're introducing yourself, you started Combat Flip Flops. What is that?
We make fashion and lifestyle products in war zones to create jobs and promote security. And then we use our profits to fund women's education in Afghanistan because we think that, you know, women being educated is kind of the answer to a lot of problems we're finding here in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. So really great purpose, great business purpose for sure. And so you, people might have seen you on television. You were on Shark Tank, right?
We were, yes. Yeah, we did that. Yeah.
Yes. How was that experience? How did that go?
It went really well. We walked out of the tank with 3 sharks, which was super fun. We practiced it just like we were practicing a Ranger hit. You know, we hit that room thousands of times before we even went in there. So it was good. And the most odd thing about Shark Tank, a lot of people want to know, I get asked that question a lot, is there's no music. So when you walk out there, you're expecting to have like the pump up music, dun, 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 and it's dead silent. It just kind of shakes you. It's like the one thing we didn't prepare for. So it was good. It was fun.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I never considered that. Probably most people don't think about that either. You know, you go into the room, you think the music is playing and everything, but that's pretty cool. So what sharks did you end up going with?
On air, we closed with Mark Cuban, Damon John, and Lori Grenier. And then through due diligence with just who we needed and what we wanted, we just closed with Cuban. So we're part of the Mark Cuban companies.
That is awesome. Definitely my favorite shark personally.
Good Texan,
how's it?
big heart. Good
Yeah,
guy.
definitely. How's it been working with him?
It's been great. You know, he always responds, very courteous, very responsive. So if I send him an email, I know I'm going to get a response back in less than 12 hours. Which is great. And his entire team is exceptionally professional, and they were instrumental for us, like being on the forefront of all of the COVID packages that were offered. Their legal team got together and really put together a great offering and a great stream of information for their portfolio of companies.
Awesome. So I think probably a lot of people are interested. Obviously, that's a very intense situation to have to pitch your business idea. But what's some examples, or not examples, but what's some advice maybe you could give to some young entrepreneurs maybe here watching this today, if they're preparing to pitch to maybe some venture capitalists or just anybody that are interested in their business idea? What kind of advice do you have for them?
So I'll give you the best advice that was ever given to me and kind of pivoted around for me. And it's like I had pitched to, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 different, investors and VC firms about, making flip-flops in Afghanistan, and uniformly I got no. And every time I went back, I just redid my pitch, based on the feedback, how I could adjust my deck, and improved every time. But this one guy took pity on me and he asked me like, hey, what do you do as a CEO? And I just gave him some like BS answer from some business course I probably didn't take or like read on the internet. And he's like, no, man, it's really simple. You raise money, you hire well, and you solve problems. And you either raise money through capital or sales. You hire well, so you hire to your weaknesses. And then the last thing is you have to be a professional problem solver, because it's so easy for everybody in your business to be like, oh, this is too tough, I can't figure it out, and just shrug their shoulders and give it up. And that rolls up the line and it stops at you. So you always need to focus on the biggest problems in your business and make sure those are going away for your team and for your mission.
Awesome. So one of the questions we had was how much capital did it take for your first batch of flip-flops? Like, how was it just kind of getting started?
I sold my 67 hot rod, a couple of motorcycles, and a few guns I grew up with. So I'm gonna have to say probably we were in the neighborhood of like, we paid a couple $1,000s for samples being made, and then I was able to like sell some more stuff out of my garage, more guns. I was almost gunless. But I think we were in the neighborhood of like $25,000 to $30,000. And that's all money that you could have raised through crowdfunding or angels really easily without having to go through the huge nut roll of going to professional VC firms who are just going to tear you apart, right? Just get the money and start, either that or just save your coin and do it yourself.
Yeah. So would you say that kind of like bootstrapping like that, just having to get rid of some of those, valuable, precious things that you're holding dear, would you recommend that route as opposed to trying to find funding outside of the way that you kind of did it?
Yeah, we rented out our house. Like I was a home builder when I got out, and I built a beautiful home, and we rented out our house on the market, and it was making money, moved into a tiny home, sold everything. And then we just kept the equity like ourselves. And I just don't like answering to other people. I would rather spend more time working on my business and answering questions about my business to people who aren't involved in it. So the rationale for us is like, let's just work really hard, save our money, live frugally, and then invest everything we can. And because just raising money just takes forever, and you're not working on your business when you're raising money. So I would always say bootstrap it.
Hey, Christian. Awesome. So we've got a question in the chat here for Griff. This is from Alex Estrada. He or she asks, what tips do you have for securing a distributor and manufacturer?
We don't do distributors. We're all direct to consumer. So I can't answer that question. But as far as securing manufacturers, you literally have to bootstrap yourself together some plane tickets and go visit them. And understand that you're probably going to be the manufacturers that you want to work with. You're going to be the lowest guy on the totem pole, giving them the least amount of revenue. So you need to make sure that you guys are both have proper expectations of the volume you're going to produce and how you're going to produce it. Because really quickly you could work with somebody, you could promise some big numbers based off your spreadsheet that's not really based in reality, and then set an improper expectation with them for the start. So it's always better to start clean, start low, pay on time, and then earn their respect all the way up.
Great. I have a follow-up question for you. How hands-on are you with the education side of that, and exactly how does that work?
We are not hands-on at all. We have a great philanthropic partner, Aid Afghanistan for Education. They're one of the leading schools in northern Afghanistan. They really focus on educating girls from ages 5 to 50. So we like their program of educating women who at some point in time haven't gotten an education. So we focus on them, and we literally just give them cash. They send us reports, and then we look at all the numbers. And, last year they got awarded UNESCO's World Literacy Award. So they're a great organization, and we don't feel the need to stand over them. All we need to do is give them money and let them roll.
Great. And also, I just want to remind the attendees, feel free to utilize the chat box if you have any questions for our panelists. Give it back to Christian now.
Yeah, so another thing we'd like to know, something that entrepreneurs are always worried about are just hiccups in the beginning, right? I think a lot of people don't actually pursue business ideas that they have because they're too worried that they're going to fail before they actually start. So what would you say are maybe some things to avoid for an early startup or somebody that's starting a business, and some road bumps that they could maybe avoid that you've experienced?
You're going to fail a lot. Like, write it down. Say, I'm going to fail a lot, but every time you're going to get better. And our line is fail cheap, learn fast. So if you're going to try a new idea, don't throw all your eggs in that basket. Try it out for as inexpensively, as affordably as you can, and then measure your results. Because, like, what are your priorities? What are your metrics to measure your priorities? What's the rhythm that you're looking at your metrics to measure your priorities? And that's something you have to go through all the time. And if you're going to do something that's not your priority, should you do it? If it is your priority, how are you going to measure it before you do it? And then how often are you going to look at that number to make sure you know if it's working? And if it's failing, that gives you the ability to cut it off immediately. Like, don't fall in love with the art or the idea. Like, don't try to push something that's not going to work. Just cut it and move on. You'll have a better idea. I promise.
So it sounds like you're definitely an advocate of just building a process and making sure that you can measure it in the best way possible, is what it sounds like.
That is correct. Yeah.
Definitely. Very cool.
If it's worth doing, it's worth measuring.
One more question from the chat. So we've got Charles Cook here asking for you, Griff, what would you recommend when marketing your business? And I would actually like to know, how does that fall under your priority metric marketing?
That's a tough question. The golden age of social media is gone. Like, when we started in 2012, 2013, 2014, when all these services were exploding pre-monetization, before they really started monetizing their platform, it was great. Now you have to be exceptionally diligent about how you market your business. And for us, it's that everything, email is king. Like, you need to get your customers' user information. After that, you're going to be looking at social media advertising, and that's going to be Facebook, Instagram. All of the ones are going to go up and going to go down. But again, if it's worth doing, it's worth measuring. So every one of our campaigns is highly targeted to a specific audience with a specific message, with a specific link tracker that lets us know, like, what ad they click through. And then we can measure how much we spent on it versus how much we made. And we have thresholds for our advertising. And if they don't meet those thresholds, we cut them immediately. You're going to be sold every shiny ball under the sun as soon as you start a company. You're going to get all of these guys. They're going to tell you, oh, I'll get you 10x to 1 on your social media ad spend. They're all lying to you. You have to learn it yourself. Like, we learned it ourselves. It will take you a week of surfing YouTube and testing it out on the back end of Facebook and Instagram. But again, what are your priorities? What are your metrics? What are your rhythms that you look at your metrics to measure your priorities? That's it. And that's going to be it. But email's king. You got to be acquiring emails.
Okay, great insight. Thank you, Griff. Christian.
So it sounds like you're definitely a fan of in-housing your marketing then. So,
yeah, I mean, like, I'm going to turn right here, but we just built a new studio, but that's been everything you've seen that's come out of our company has come out of 5 people and like a 20 by 20 office. You can Google how to take good photography. We used iPhones for the first 4 years of our company because that's all you need. They take great photos, but just learn how to use the tool. Don't go spending $100 per product photo with somebody. Like, do it yourself, apply the right amount of filters, get going, and just get to work. Yeah, because if you outsource your marketing to these guys, the way it's going to be is you're going to have to spend a minimum with them every month, and it's going to be anywhere between $2,500 to $3,000, and then they're going to want 20% of the ad spend on top of that. And then you hit some certain thresholds, and it breaks out. The more money you spend, the less commission they're going to take. But I got to tell you, you got to be a pretty monster company to hit those thresholds. And for the moment, like, they're not going to watch the metrics like you're going to watch them. I mean, I literally, on my desk, I have one of the monitors, and it's just streaming all of our ads. And when they don't meet our thresholds, it's one toggle button, turn it off. So I'm not spending any more money on it. Keep it in-house. You can go bankrupt on marketing really quickly. Trust me, I know.
Yeah, I think that's some really great advice. I think definitely something that probably people struggle with is just trying to make that decision. What do we do in-house? What do we outsource? But it sounds like you guys have figured out a way to do everything good and keep it in-house and save some money.
Yeah, I mean, it's even things like, we wanted drones for photography, and you have to have a Part 107 license to do that. Well, I could pay somebody $1,000 to show up for an hour, or I could spend the $500 taking the course and the test and go get one myself, and we could do it on our own. And I pay that tax once. You know, so it's you have to really look at the long-term objectives of your marketing department and what skills you're going to stack in house. And iPhone Photography Academy is a great website, and it's $100, and you can learn how to use your iPhone like a DSLR, and it'll probably cover you for the first couple of years of your business.
Awesome. Great advice. So you mentioned you have, what you said, five employees? Is that the people you're employing right now? Is that including including yourself, or?
That's including myself. Yeah, that's just our team. Yeah. So we're super small team, and the number we look at is revenue per employee. So as soon as we start cracking more, like, you know, more than a few $100,000 per employee, then we can start looking at hiring other ones. But that's the metric that we use to really judge where we need to be employee wise.
Very cool. So do you have plans to expand and maybe start hiring more people, or are you guys pretty set right now with those five?
Yeah, we're set. I think we're probably going to tap out at probably 20 to do what we want to do in perpetuity. And it's like old Charlie Beckwith, the former of Delta Force, and I'm going to swear here. He's like, I'd rather go down a river with 7 studs than 100 shitheads. And that's just our vibe. Like, we just want, 20 hitters and just roll with that.
Love it.
We got a question in the chat here for you, Griff. What made you realize that you wanted to hire more people, or is that just part of your metric or your plan to scale up a little bit?
So there was, it was just the 3 of us for 4 years, the 3 founders, owner, operating, just working the company, doing everything under the sun we could to keep the company afloat and driving forward. And then we had Shark Tank, and one of my mentors was a guy named Paul Litchfield. And if you guys remember the Reebok pump, like, he invented it. He retired as the senior VP of product development at Reebok. And he's one of my mentors. And I called him and I was like, look, man, we're going to scale. What should I scale first? And the first thing he said is scale your customer service. When you scale, you're going to break things. You're going to screw things up, and your customers are going to remember it, but they're also going to remember how you handled it. So the first thing I did is I went and I hired my neighbor, and she was an elementary school secretary for 17 years. And she just kept getting passed over for promotions. And she was really upset about it. And I said, hey, why don't you just come work for me? You can work from home, do what you want. Just all I really want is just make customers happy. And she's our mama bear, and she's just been killing it ever since. And then after that, I hired her son, just because our marketing required a higher level of photography and videography. And her son was really good behind the camera, and we were able to mentor him. And we've been through 6 countries together, a couple tattoos as well. And it's just been a great experience. Yeah. So it's a family business.
Great. Thank you. And if you don't mind, where could our attendees find your products at, either online or in store?
Everything is at combatflipflops.com. You follow us on social at Combat Flipflops. And if you want to reach out to me directly, it's on Instagram at combatflipflops.griff, GRIFF.
Great. All right, Christian.
So, Griff, I think for the sake of time, we are going to circle back to Realtor Rob, but thank you so much. That was awesome. So much really, really great information. I think people could really take a lot away from that. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, Mr. Rob, you think you're good? I think we're back. You're back with us. So
I think I'm good.
All right. So a question we have for you is, I would say, what aspect of running a business has been the most challenging for you, and has that changed over time?
I would say, like Griff was just speaking about, like the marketing piece. I mean, it helps now that, I'm working from home, 90% of the time, but I mean, that can be a job all on its own. I'm constantly trying to research and read articles, and my thing is, I try to think of it as, I want my clients and customers to know what I know. So I don't mind sharing. There's more than enough business for everybody. So if I know it, I try to put it out, to the masses.
Awesome. And so I think everybody would agree that real estate is a bit of a people's game, right? You have to be a people's person to kind of excel. Do you have anybody that you work with very closely? Is it just yourself?
Well, currently I'm a solo agent, and the reason why I didn't join a team is because I figure, especially, coming into this being, I consider myself fairly new. I know a lot of people have been in it double-digit years, but you learn all aspects of the business. You learn the selling side, the buying side, investors, leases, so I just try to immerse myself in, all parts of real estate before I either try to join a team or start a team of my own. So, exactly what your other fellow realtors are going through, or, things like that. So that's why I started out solo and still am solo agent.
Yeah, absolutely. So what advice would you have for somebody that maybe wants to get involved in the real estate game here in Fort Worth or just anywhere in the country starting out?
Ooh, okay. Great question. So don't give up. A lot of agents, people, see these shows. I mean, like, I'm sure all these other businesses as well, the reality TV and $1 million listings, and they make it look so easy, and everybody just wants to buy the house, and the first contract goes through with no hiccups. But it's hard work, getting your name out there, getting people to trust you. You just have to stick with it. And I like to say, I can't think of who said it off the top of my head, but don't compare your insides with others' outsides, because you're looking at them 10 years into the game, and you're 10 days, 10 months, and you're expecting to be at that same level. And it just doesn't happen like that. You have to pay your dues, you have to go through things, but if you stick with it, you will get there.
Awesome. And so just so our viewers know, are you more on the sales side? Are you on the investment side? What is it that you're looking to do right now in real estate?
Well, being a solo agent, you have to do it all. And I mean, that was the big shocker. When they say do it all, that's do it all. So, if you don't do it or you don't get to it today, it doesn't get done. So I do, leasing properties, selling properties, investments, and I do even leasing. I don't know if I said that already, but that's something I would advise for new realtors to do as well, because a lot of folks, a lot of realtors won't do leases because there's not a lot of money in it. But I look at it as people who are leasing, they don't want to lease. They're leasing because of their circumstances. So they're like buyers in training. So one day they're going to work their way up to be buyers. And they also know people. We have a rule that we throw around, 1 = 5. So you help one person and you do a great job. I mean, a kick butt job, they're going to refer you to at least 5 other people. And that's another way that you can expand your business and get your name out there.
Awesome. So starting out, would you recommend maybe any like technology that has kind of helped you kind of get a foot place in the market, or just maybe like some forums or anything that you've kind of noticed has helped you network and just come across deals?
Well, okay, so I've talked to a couple realtors here recently. So it's easy, but it's difficult if you don't do it. So just think about what you like. So I'm a veteran, so I went and researched all the veteran groups on Facebook. Well, I'll back up a little bit. I don't know if I'm dating myself, if my gray hair isn't, but I never even had Facebook until I became a realtor. So I was already behind the power curve. But you just become more involved in things that you like to do. So I like sports. I like motorcycles. I'm a veteran. So I've gotten into all of these groups, with TCC, TCU, to have veterans groups, all the veteran groups online, with Facebook, and you just communicate with people. You let them know what you do a couple times, but you don't force it down their throat. You make those relationships. Uh-oh. Saved by the bell.
Okay, very nice, very nice. So honestly, all very good information, but one thing we'd like to know as well, I guess, is like you said, you're a solo agent right now. Obviously, most people starting out, that's probably the way they're going to go as well, just until they kind of get their feet wet. Would you recommend kind of going the way that you've gone? I know other people maybe try to attach themselves to like a brokerage and just be like a real estate agent. under a broker at first to kind of learn the market, or would you recommend going the way that you did?
Well, you have to. So I am part of a brokerage. You have to hang your license
Okay,
or your hat, right? Because that gives you that's your umbrella. So they, provide your E&O, errors and omissions, insurance. So in case, something goes wrong with the paperwork or whatever, you're covered. But yes, I am part of Century 21, Judge Fight. So, and
okay,
as far as being a part of a team or not, it comes down to personal preference. You have to know yourself, and you need to be yourself. Don't try to be something, that you see on TV, because like I said, before, there's enough people to go around where if you be yourself, they'll know what they're getting, and that you have a client for life, but if you, try to be one thing on camera and then you see them in your neighborhood and you're something else, I mean, that's going to travel faster than a good word would.
absolutely. So if you don't mind asking, how did you get your start? Was there any sort of like education that you felt was necessary before you started getting into real estate? Were you self-taught, YouTube, college, that kind of thing? What was the best way to get into it? I know there's so many gurus and stuff out there, just so nobody kind of gets led astray.
Well, okay, so for me personally, I tried online courses and that wasn't for me. That lasted about a couple weeks. I like the interactions, the brick and mortar. So I went to, I guess, an in-house school, Champions here, local in Fort Worth. And that worked out perfect for me. I went every weekend for, 2 months straight. And then I did another 2 weekends for the prep. And for me, I passed it on the first time. So that was the way to go pace, and they can finish it in 2 weeks.
Okay, very cool.
Was that all of your question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you pretty much just, your advice was do some online courses essentially, and just kind of figure out what works best for you at your own pace, things like that. Am I gathering that correctly?
Right.
Okay, very cool, very cool. And so for anybody that's interested tonight, maybe in getting involved in real estate, is there anything special about the market and DFW that you would kind of relate to people?
Well, I mean, the market is booming. That's why I wanted to come here. And I think the other part of your question that I missed was, I think, how did I get in, or how, why? I've been trying to get into real estate for probably the last 10 years, but of course I was in the military, so I wasn't able to give my full attention, to it. So I kind of put it on the back burner. But once I retired, I had a discussion with my wife, and got to have somebody to back you. And she said, hey, if you're going to do this, let's go. So actually, I tried to do like the first 6 months as a part-time agent, which there is no part-time real estate. You have 2 full-time jobs. But the beginning of this year, we also had another discussion at the dinner table that, hey, if you're going to do this, full steam ahead, full time. So the job that brought me out here to Texas, I, put in my 2 weeks and resigned from that. And now I'm a full-time agent, giving all my attention to my clients. So you have to have both feet in.
Awesome.
I got a question here for you, Rob.
Uh-oh.
From our attendees. So Alex Estrada asks for you, Rob, if someone is interested in commercial real estate, would they need a specialized license?
Yes, that is a whole, I'm sorry, that's a whole different, so the initial schooling is the same, because the schooling, hopefully I got my phone right here, so if I say anything off kilter, somebody will be calling or texting me, but the schooling is to get you to pass the test. Now, once you pass the test and get your license for whatever state you're in, then you can kind of specialize, just like, anything else, a doctor, lawyer, what field you want to go into. So they do have their own specialized, and you have to keep in mind with the commercial, the amounts as far as money and contracts are a lot bigger, but understanding they take a lot longer to go through. So you do have to have that reserve, to make it through, until that deal completes.
Great, thank you.
So Rob, you mentioned there's no such thing as a part-time agent. So
Correct.
for people that are getting started, maybe they don't have the same background as you. They didn't have that full-time job. Like you said, you were in the military for a long time, got out. Maybe you had a little bit of a income cushion. You didn't have to worry too much about getting a paycheck right away. Is there anything that people can do if they want to make it a career starting out to make it a little bit easier on themselves as far as like getting paid quickly?
Well, you can do leases. Like I said, they're not as much money, but I mean, it gets your feet wet and it gets you, you out there, people knowing you. And like I said, word travels. If you do a kick butt job with someone, they're gonna recommend you. If they even hear somebody in the crowd say, hey, thinking about this house, they'll be like, oh, call Realtor Rob. He's my guy. I stand by him. He did right by me, and I recommend him to you. But also need to have, I would say, okay, so initially it was maybe 3 to 6 months reserve, because what you do today, you won't see the results for probably at least 3 months. But now I would probably bump that out a little bit more, maybe to 6 to 9 months reserve, because, it is what it is. You got to find the people, then you have escrow, and then all this stuff that comes up, inspections. So, and you can be a part-time agent, but I'm just saying, as far as your mindset, you're going to have, like 80-hour work weeks, 40 at your, salary job, and then 40, with real estate. So it's, it's not going to be easy, but it is doable.
Awesome. That's great advice. I think a lot of people might try to take that leap too early and end up, biting the bullet somewhere down the road.
Yes.
With that being said, what are some things, like maybe somebody has a part-time job, maybe even a full-time job, they're sick of it, they want to get into real estate. Is there anything that they could do before they make that jump to the full-time position to kind of just position themselves well when they're entering real estate? Maybe like making contacts with people, building some sort of list or anything like that before they make the jump?
You can always find realtors. I mean, I'm available. Like I said, I share anything I know, because there's more than enough. So I don't have any secrets. But you can shadow. Some brokerages don't allow you to come in part-time, but anybody you can kind of, for lack of a better word, latch on to and be their shadow. I mean, just do that. I mean, there are plenty of people that are willing to mentor you. There are groups that you can, become a part of without, having your license. But just go spend a day with some of these agents and, day in the life. Or with technology, you can watch YouTube. There's a couple guys that I watch, and I mean, they're free. So like Griff was saying earlier, I mean, as cheap as you can do it, and I can afford free. So I try to find all the free coaching and teaching, because those are the guys that I think are really in it for the right reasons. You're in it to help people. If you help enough people, you'll get what you want in return without even, going after it, per se.
Cool. And so we had another question in the chat talking about VA loans. Is there any specific training for VA loans that you need in the real estate game? And then also, I would add to that, you mentioned that a lot of times you're browsing groups looking for vets and stuff like that, just people that you connect with. As veterans, is the VA loan something that vets can leverage to kind of get into real estate a little bit easier, or is that not something that you can do so much?
Now, can you clarify on that as far as VA getting into real estate? You're talking about into a home?
I guess what I'm asking is the VA loan something that you can leverage for like an investment purpose or like some sort of like business vehicle in real estate? Or
now,
is it kind of off limits?
Now, no. I mean, that's a good question. Now, if you're talking about as far as purchasing for investment, now the thing with the VA is, the caveat is you have to occupy that property. So you wouldn't be able to use your VA to buy a vacation home per se, but what you could do, I've seen people do, investors, they would buy a duplex and rent out one side and they would stay on one side. So you could use that, but you have to occupy the property. But I would say, as far as the VA program, if that's what the other question was, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our clients to put their needs above ours. So to me, if you're a veteran and you're qualified, you have your COE, which is your certificate of eligibility, that is the way to go, and that's one of the reasons why I got into this, and chose veterans to specifically work with, more than most, first time home buyers and veterans, because they be educated, because a lot of times, we're our own worst enemy by steering folks away from the VA program because it may be a little more paperwork. But if you're a veteran, you've already earned that entitlement, and that's what you need to be, focused on.
Awesome. I think that's great advice, especially since most people here probably qualify for that. So
yes,
definitely sounds like you should give it a look. Very cool. Rob, I think for the sake of time, we're probably going to have to move on to the next speaker, but I appreciate everything that you had to say. Lots of good information there as well. So far, we're two for two. You guys are killing it. So thank you. All right. So I think we'll move to Ms. Guerrero, if that sounds good.
Hi.
Awesome. So I know it's been a minute, so maybe if you want to just jog our memory really quick, what a little bit of your background.
Yeah. So I was in the military from 2002, 2010, flying C-130s. Left in 2010 to get a master's in occupational therapy. Started a company called Turbo Pup. And then actually in 2019 went back into the when I was initially in the military, I was in the reserve, and in 2019 went back to the reserves, and have still continued doing working with my company Turbo Pup. And I fly planes.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Basically, like I had this complete change of heart in 2010, and then in 2019 went right back to my roots. So it was kind of funny. If there's any veterans in the crowd ever thinking about going back, I highly recommend the Guard or Reserve. It's a good gig.
Cool. And so speaking of Turbo Pup, can you tell us a little bit about what that is and how you came up with the idea?
Yeah, we actually, it's basically power bars for dogs. And so our idea was inspired by my dog, Duncan. We went on a backcountry ski trip. He is what I would call a grazer as far as food is concerned. So he didn't eat anything before we left. We ended up going about, 2.5 hours in, and at the top of a mountain, my husband and I were sitting and having some food because we were starving. We had just expended a lot of energy, and my dog just was staring at us. And I was like, "Oh, you didn't bring any food." So the joke is I gave him my burrito. I had to eat my own power bar, and then I was like, "Man, why don't they have something like this for dogs?" So one thing kind of led to another, and then the company was born.
That is too funny. Love that story, and I can definitely relate. We have a dog at the house that is always looking at us like he just can't get enough food. So
right. Well, and if you think about it, it kind of makes sense intellectually that it's one thing for a house dog that sits around all day and you feed them twice a day, but then if you're taking them on trail runs, or a lot of guys have the mountain bikers, they're going on these 10-mile bike rides with their dogs running behind them the whole time, and it's like that dog's probably hungry. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's too funny. So you, along with Griff, you were also on Shark Tank. So you brought this idea to them, and can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, well, I was laughing at Griff's memory of it, because in my head I was like, I thought I heard music, but now I guess I just made that up. Maybe it was just in my head, but yeah, I would say that my experience with it was I wasn't I didn't have a lot of experience with the show, and I was working with another group that also supports veterans called the Institute for Veterans and Military Families, and they're, like you guys, a really great group that does a lot for veterans. And they had gotten an email that Shark Tank was looking for veteran entrepreneurs. And so I was like, well, let me just give this a whirl. Why not? Like, what's the worst that can happen? So I literally just sent them an email. And it's funny because my first email was like, hey, I'm Christina. I started a company. You might be interested. And then I didn't hear from them. And then I sent a second email and I was like, I'm Christina and I was in the military and you'd be lucky to have me. And then the next day I got a phone call back and I was like, oh, okay. So like that would definitely be some recommendations that if you want to sell your company, you got to be able to sell yourself. So that was a good wake up. And then, yeah, and it was kind of like, one thing when you're doing Shark Tank that's really interesting, if you look at the statistics, and Matt could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like 3% make it in, or 0.3%. Is that right, Matt? Something like that.
55 to 65,000 companies apply, and they down select the 300 before they fly down 200.
And then, but how many actually make it on TV?
175.
Yeah. So yeah,
out of those, half of them get deals on air, and out of the ones that get deals on air, half of those close through due diligence. So it's like 35 to 40 companies a year out of 50 or 60,000.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
wild. So the entire time I was going through the process, they kept being like, but you might not make it. But so like you go through these phases, and they're like, but we can't, nothing's guaranteed. So it's just kind of like putting one foot in front of the other. So that's kind of my biggest memory of it. And then of course, when you get out there, they have you stand on this line for like a minute. You just stare at the judges. You're not supposed to say anything. And it's like the most awkward minute of your life. You're just looking at everybody and being like, do I smile? Do I give them like, do I stare? What am I trying to accomplish here? And it's something about the camera, like the way they're panning it. But that's definitely the craziest moment. And like Matt, I practiced a million times. I did the walk down the hall. I did the walk. Like I stopped in front of the pretend judges in my brain. Like Matt and firing, we do something when we fly. We call chair flying. And so we basically just simulate in our head all the steps it is required to perform a maneuver or land. And so, I took that with me to the tank. And so it was a great process. And Damon John is fantastic, and he is incredibly supportive. And he is he really is has a great respect for veterans. And actually I was going to lunch with the adjunct general. Is a 2-star in Vermont. And I walked into his office, and it said Damon John was on the front of a military influencer magazine. I thought that was really cool. So we took a picture and I sent it to him. But yeah, he's definitely a big advocate for veterans as well.
Very cool. Sounds like a perfect person to get masked up with there then. Definitely. And so you came out of the military, started this business. Did you have any experience as an entrepreneur beforehand? So how has it been since then? Like running your company, it's the first time you've ever done it. How has that experience just been in general?
It's just a lot of learning. I think for me, the one thing that really helped was networking. If somebody gave me really good advice once, and they said, if you need something, just ask. And I'm like, it's not how the world works. And she's like, yes, it is. Just ask. And if they don't know, just ask someone else. And if they don't know, just ask someone else. So, for example, when we were trying to find a manufacturer, it is really difficult to find co-packers. And that's what they call people who make other people's stuff. And in my experience in the food world. And if you Google co-packer, like, because you do all these things, you're like, but if I Google it, something should come up. And it's not how it works. It's really interesting. So, this particular person said, yeah, just keep asking. And so I just kept walking around, and literally every person I met, I would be like, hey, do you know a co-packer? Like anytime they had something, I'd be like, oh, that's great advice. Do you know a co-packer? And then I was at a farmer's market, and this guy was like, oh yeah, there's one up in Washington. And that ended up being our very first co-packer, which is interesting.
That's awesome. So obviously it sounds like a very difficult process, just finding, manufacturing, distributing. So what would you say for people that are looking to do something similar to maybe ease all of those pains? Is there anything that you found at the end that kind of made it easier, or was it just networking until you finally kind of got in there?
Definitely networking, but I'd say everything, baby steps. That was what we did. So we started in our kitchen. My husband had a mold made that it was like basically this kind of squares cut out. So he would roll it out onto he'd roll out the formula, I guess the dough, onto a baking sheet, and then just press out all the bars. And then once we outgrew that, we went to the first co-packer. And then I will say my personal experience with Turbo Pup was the co-packing process going from our kitchen to co-packer was insane. Like it was just insane how we weren't able to repeat the process. That was probably my most costly issue. We had to do about 4 or 5 runs before we were successful. And my husband's a food scientist, so he wasn't able to solve the problem. So again, one of the great things you learn in the military is how to solve problems. So I basically looked up food science schools at any college that had a food science degree and started with the A in the alphabet and clawed my way down. And then Washington State, it's a very long day, was the guy who had the answer. And he actually invited me out to a food science seminar. And that kind of solved all my problems. But it is definitely tricky. There's a steep learning curve when moving to a co-packer or distributor, to a manufacturer. Distributors aren't that hard.
Interesting. So I guess I'm curious, was it just a problem of trying to like scale the recipe that made it so difficult?
Yeah, because it's for in the food world, and I'm guessing this isn't as hard for non-consumables, but in the food world, there's so much science involved that you don't think about, that changes with just the most minute changes. So with us, ours was the olive oil wasn't blending into the water. And it wasn't an issue because we were using a blender that was basically cutting through the water in our kitchen. But a manufacturer doesn't have like a giant blender. Well, he didn't until we actually bought this thing, and it looked like a tiny little boat motor, and we like stuck it in there, and that was what finally made it work. But basically what would happen was all the oil would seep out of the product, and then everything would burn. And the thing about going to co-packers is you don't just start with like 5 bars. It is like 200 pounds per run, which 6 failed runs, 200 pounds each. It becomes very costly, and it's also just emotionally draining.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine that process was super stressful.
So stressful.
We got a question in the chat here for you, Christina. Alex Estrada asks, do you have a specific process in solving problems that arise within the company, i.e. Turbo Pup's ingredient prices rising to bird flu outbreaks, or maybe some sourcing or supply management issues?
Oh, that, that actually happened to us, Alex. Great question. Our primary ingredient was egg yolks, and then the bird flu hit, and then you got to pivot, and that's why I found networking so important, because guess who I called? Washington State University again, and said, the same food science guy, hey, we can't work with egg yolks. What can we use? And then it leads back into the science, right? Because egg yolk has a binding property, that we couldn't then duplicate with, something non-egg yolk. So yeah, unfortunately, what you'll find is when you become an entrepreneur and you decide to make a kind of new product, sorry, I just had a little visitor. When you start to make a new product, things just come up that haven't been solved before. But there's definitely smarter people that are going to be out there that can kind of point you in the right direction. It's inevitable. They didn't come in like the entire time until I started talking.
That's so funny. Inevitable, just like any problems that could potentially arise, that will happen. Great. Also, attendees, again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Alex is one of our attendees, is crushing it. He's asked like 6 questions, so keep them going.
Thank you, Alex.
Yep.
And I'd also like to say that, Matt, you are awesome. I did go through the process of raising money through grants, and I did spend my time doing that and that worked out for me, but then I didn't do a very good job of keeping it lean. So that's another story. But I will say, in case anybody does go that direction, the nice thing about doing that is that I was able to, again, build a network and individuals when I got those grants. So it is possible, and there's a lot of grants out there for veterans.
Awesome, that's great advice. I think a lot of people probably don't really consider that. I guess I'll just kind of pivot off of the little one running in the room. So I guess that leads to a pretty good question. Obviously, starting a business and running a business takes a lot of time, especially to do it successfully. So what advice do you have for young entrepreneurs to kind of balance like work life and family life?
I split everything up into kind of different days. So I always make sure that I'm hitting Turbo Pup on the customer service side on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Because I deal, I'm not a huge business. We're very small. So we don't get, blasts of emails, but I also, feel like a 48-hour response is good for most people. You always get the person who's mad that you're not there like within 5 minutes. So I make sure that I'm hitting it every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That kind of covers all my bases. And I make sure that shipping's always done every Monday and Wednesday, and then for sure out by Friday. And by that, I don't know if you guys ever notice for the participants, like sometimes you order something and it'll say like, your package has been like fulfilled. So we haven't actually sent it out the door, but at least it tells people, and then an automated message. And that, that doesn't take a ton of time to do. My biggest time suck is packaging. And, it's not the worst thing in the world, but kind of, doing that. And then for me, I honestly, apparently I've learned as I've gotten older that I have like ADHD when it comes to occupation. So I just, if I'm not doing like 3 different occupations at the same time, my life doesn't feel right. So I burn out on one and then start back to the other. So that's the great thing about being in the Guard and flying, because I go and I fly and then I get bored with flying. So then I want to stay, and then I get on orders and stay in the Guard. And then, the whole time I'm interspersing Turbo Pup into that. And then, yeah, the personal life, if you have kids, it's definitely for us, it's so both my kids are in daycare, and it's when we pick them up at 4:30, it's their time until bed, unless I'm doing something like talking with you guys, awesome guys. But yeah, it's definitely like that's everything shuts down and everything kind of comes in at before or after that.
Awesome. Sounds like definitely you just have to prioritize. So something interesting that kind of just came to mind was I've noticed that a lot of people have just been getting outside so much with the pandemic going on. I'm wondering if you guys have seen maybe some sort of like uptick in sales or anything like that, just because maybe people are out walking their dogs more, doing stuff outside more in general.
We always see a big uptick in the summer. And we did see an uptick, but usually right around now is when things kind of start plateauing, which is crazy, because I'm like, well, what about all the people in Florida? It's still pretty there, but I think a lot of like the big trail, like people like the Pacific Crest Trail who go on the Appalachian Trail. I mean, that's kind of got its window. So that yeah, it has been slowing down. I'd say the biggest hurdle we faced during COVID was just honestly shipping, like just shipping delays have just been, I mean, crazy. I'm just like, how is that not gotten there yet? So that's annoying, but.
Yeah, Griffin's nodding his head. It looks like he agrees with you. Awesome.
Got one more question for you in the chat here, Christina. Going into Shark Tank, did you have a fixed percentage equity you were willing to give up? From Alex Estrada once again.
Yeah, it was no more than 30%, and my deal was for 35. So I would say that at the end of the day, if a shark is offering you a deal and they're giving you a majority of your company, even if it was, looking back, knowing what I know now from the value add I got out of that, I would have done like, up to 49. I maybe might have even done more. I don't know. Damon, it has been a really mind-blowing experience, very surreal. I got to go see him at the Empire State Building, you know, and that was like just going to, I was like, I'm in an elevator up the Empire State Building to go see Damon John. Like that's just kind of like, yeah, the everybody gets wrapped around the percentage. And I think that if, you know, you're doing super well and you're already a multi-million-dollar company, then I get it. But if I was just peanuts at the time, so yeah, just blow it off.
Great, thank you.
All right, again, I think for the sake of time, we'll head on to the next speaker. Christina, thank you very much for all of that.
Thank you.
It was great, definitely. All righty, Mr. Boss, ready for us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
Loud and clear.
Great.
Cool. So if you could, just go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background for us.
Sure. DW Bobst, own and run Trend HR since 1997. Was in the Navy in the late 80s and got out in 92. Was in Naval Intelligence with linguist and Russian language and also crypto technology. So it was a short stint. The Cold War ended and they didn't need guys like me anymore. So got in, got out, and went on to bigger and better things.
Awesome. And so what is the company that you started?
Trend HR in 1997.
All right. And can you tell us a little bit about what you guys do?
Sure. We pretty much do, at this point, we started in 97 by just doing staffing and recruiting, and then expanded from there into what they call a professional employment organization and also human resource organization. Still do some specialized staffing and recruiting, but the bulk of our business is helping companies with their employees through insurances and employee packets, government compliance and reports. Like we helped close to 500 companies with their PPP loans and the reporting and that type of stuff, helping most of them get it within a week. And then just anything to help them, better further and advance their what their strategic goals are through their employees' relationships.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think people probably have a lot of different definitions maybe for what HR is. How would you necessarily describe HR?
Well, I mean, it's what most people want to do is, you're right, there's a lot of different ways people look at it, but anything that has to do with employees in a company, I mean, it's a strategic approach to how to effectively manage your employees and trying to reach your company goals. And so people have different ways of achieving that. And what we find, since we mostly deal with small business owners, it's an extension of each business owner on what each of their goals are. Some find that having employees is one of the most important aspects. So they really take great care of them, give them great benefits, almost to the detriment of the ownership. And then you'll find some where they use employees like a commodity and pretty much have over 100% turnover every year. And so we have to basically curtail what the approach is to each of those clients and try and help them the best they can.
Awesome. How large are the businesses that usually take on y'all services?
Well, we have a basic pack. For us to do it correctly, there's a software package that we do your payroll, and we're able to integrate the different employees so they can see online their payroll, their benefits if they pay in any kind of 401k or retirement plans, their PTO, reviews. We do a lot of home health care and other health care. So if they have licenses or requirements that they have to renew each year, they get notices and things like that. And it's all paperless and online. And so that software is pretty expensive if someone was to buy it on their own. So we're able to, by pulling together these thousands of companies, we're able to get the buying power to reduce those costs for these different clients. And so we'd like to have at least 10 because the setup costs are, pretty tremendous to try and put that setup cost for someone to divide that between 2 employees or 3 employees. And our average client is about 35 to 50 employees.
Okay, very cool. Well, it looks like we have a question in the chat again. So how do you balance work and family life? I know we had this question a minute ago for Christina, but it obviously varies. And would you say there are any tips on maybe switching between a family mindset and a work mindset?
Well, we started from scratch, and basically you gotta pay the bills and hopefully your spouse. And at that point, luckily we didn't have kids. My wife had a really good job, and didn't make a penny for the first 6 months, and so, but we were blessed enough to get the first check after that, and then at that point, I've been doing this for 25 years, and so my family's number one, and but back then your family will suffer on some case, but hopefully they understand, and been married to the same woman. And my kids haven't left me at this point, so I think I've done most of it right.
Sounds like a pretty good job. Oh man, that's too funny. So 25 years, wow, that's very impressive, honestly. So what made you want to start a business? How did you get your start? And maybe what were some of the things that motivated you to become an entrepreneur, self-starter?
Well, I guess I've always been an entrepreneur, but didn't really know it. I went into the military after college. I was actually a college basketball player and always wanted to go in the military. And I didn't have a lot of direction on how to fulfill what the recruiters wanted. And so I ended up being in a place in the Navy that I wasn't really planning on. I thought I would be jumping out of planes and blowing things up. And so made lemonade. I'm glad I did it. But when I got out, didn't really know what to do. I had a marketing degree from college, and so I had to basically get a sales job. And after a few years, a lot of these guys, I mean, they seem really passionate about what they do. I really didn't know what I was going to do. I was unhappy with those sales jobs, and I honestly was going to be a fireman. And so a lot of these fire departments back then, this was in the mid 90s, were really hard to get on back then. And so I walked into a temp service and was looking for a temp job, and lo and behold, they needed some sales guys. And so I was very upfront and honest and said, I can sell, but I'm going to be a fireman. And so I'm going to date myself, but we watched, my wife and I went and watched this old movie called Backdraft, and she had a fit. She thought her future husband was going to die in some high rise out here. And we're east of Dallas, so there's not even high rises out here, but I was making really good money in a short time. And I got offered 2 really good jobs, Garland and Mesquite. And those guys still wanted me. I was definitely fit and ready to do the job, but the wife went out, and so I kept doing sales for the temporary staffing world, and then went off and started my own gig in '97. Always knew I could sell it. Didn't have the first clue on how to do the payroll or the back office stuff, but I always figured if I could sell it, I could figure out the rest.
Awesome. So I imagine starting a business in '97. From then to now, technology has probably played just a massive role in your company. What are some things that have changed, I guess, like from then to now, that have been most impactful?
Well, at one point we were handling 15 to 20,000 employees a week, doing somewhere between 100 and 200,000 W-2s. It took a lot of payroll processors and a lot of customer service when we first got going, and now we can do it with about the half the amount of people. We had to have more IT staff back then, and we've grown tremendously, but at the same time hadn't had to add the IT staff. So what I've kind of figured out is, with the technology and we outsource, if we're not doing it, and it's not one of our main services, we outsource a lot of those functions and the integration of those between, it used to be 3 or 4 different softwares that you would have to go from one into another. They integrate now. So, and the neat part is the paperless, that people are able to do even applications on their smartphone into our system, and they're able to get the different forms. You're signing them online. And so the government requires everything is electronic signature now. It used to all be paper. Even for those of you who deal with employees, the I-9s and things like that, you had to file them certain ways. And so just the technology, not to say it's perfect, because I couldn't even get on here at first. So I guess I'm long in the tooth or something like that. I couldn't get the video to work right. Our internet went down, and my IT guy's off today, my main one. So I had one of the lower guys come up here and try and help me. It didn't work right. So I wouldn't say we have it all figured out. They have it figured out, but they try. I'm up here in a different floor and everything. They keep me away and keep me out of the middle of stuff on regular occasions. So, but to answer your question, we can probably do 5 times the amount of work with the same person that we used to. But some of it's, some of it's sad in my opinion, though, because, when you replace really good, we have most of our average employees have been around for over 10 plus years. We have really good staying power, but we probably haven't added the amount of new hires as we probably would have, but it does make us more profitable. And as you know, there's always cost pressure. The longer you're in business, the longer your product or service, there's always cost pressure that even though your clients say they love you, but if someone else comes in and saves them 10%, especially on health insurance or payroll costs or any other overhead, they're going to take a pretty hard look at it. So we have to try and save costs where we can too.
Awesome. I have a question for you, Dan. So being B2B, how important is being customer centric, working with your clients?
Well, I mean, I'm old school when it comes to that. A lot of my competitors have really done a lot of their marketing and a lot of their customer services online, and they try and only do it with technology. We do a lot of face-to-face, or these days with Zoom. And we try and have a lot of touch. When you call my office, I still have a front desk receptionist. They take the phone calls. We immediately get them over to somebody who's a specialist with at least 1 or 2 people in backup. And the reason why, and I won't say that every industry is that way, but when people call Trend, especially as a client, they're having a problem with their payroll. They're having a problem where they're trying to go to CVS or to their doctor. The card's not working. The doctor somehow has a billing issue. And even though that should be United Healthcare or Blue Cross Blue Shield's issue, by us stepping in the middle and helping them out, we're just forging that relationship even deeper, and the loyalty that comes behind that. So, we just find that a lot of people try and replace everything with technology, and we're old school. And that's why most of our clients, we have a lot of clients that we've had for over 10 years. And I think a lot of that is because they create really close relationships with their customer service reps.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. I think that's some really good advice also that people can take away. Definitely just, I think if you own a business, from what it sounds like from all of you, relationships are extremely important at every level. So I think if there's any takeaway, that's definitely one of them. So I guess probably what a lot of people want to know is, what is the best part about owning your own business, and has it changed over time?
If this question's for me, I would say
it is.
I unlike these guys, I just kind of backed into my business. I fell in love with it. I really enjoy it because I see the need for it in the world today. And it doesn't matter who's in office. Washington's always going to have more requirements for small businesses. They're going to come up with new and great ways to spend our money. So, and they'll ask for reporting, and it usually comes down to the small business and the employer to get it. So I guess it allows me the freedom to do what I need to do. And I guess I'm spoiled now. I'm probably unemployable. I probably couldn't work for anyone else because I love to gamble every day and make risk and challenges and either get the reward or loss. And at the end of the day, if I make a bad decision, I have to look in the mirror. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
But the money's great too. I make pretty decent money.
I think that's probably what most people are wondering. Oh, that's awesome. So let's see. What other questions do we have for you? Let's say, obviously, you've been in the game for a long time. What kind of, if you had to say just like one quick piece of advice, starting a business, what would it be in today in 2020, I guess?
Well, I mean, I spoke in front of a college crowd one time, and I told them something that I don't think I have to tell you guys, but just never quit. Put one foot in front of the other, you know what I mean? So, I mean, there's going to be challenges, but ex-military guys, man, you guys, y'all already have it. You know?
Definitely.
But yeah, just never quit.
Awesome.
So we have a couple of questions that are sort of general for the whole crowd of our panelists. So if anybody wants to answer this, you feel free. Has your service or training as a soldier or airman given you a leg up in making an ethical business? And if so, then how?
I guess I'm the only one on mute. I was only in for about 4 years, but I mean, it just reinforced to me the discipline and how to do things the right way. And if you didn't, there was someone down the line that was going to pay the price. So to me, it was ingrained in me very quickly and easily.
I'll say for me, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Rob. All you, buddy.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll say for me, I mean, I think it gives you that foot in the door. You know, people see the perception of the military as being trustworthy, but you have to uphold that. And I think the way that it's helped me is that, you know, in the military, I dealt with people from all walks of life, you know, social, you know, sexual, religious, you know, and you get them to come together for a common purpose, a common goal. So I feel like I have the advantage where I can speak on a level with anybody that I come in contact with, and I can get them to see the bigger picture of, you know, getting them in their dream home, their forever home. And I think that's my biggest and greatest advantage.
I think for me, we always have the line of like mission first or people first, mission always. And it's, or mission first, people always, whichever way it goes. But like, you always take care of your people. Like I screwed that one up. It's a long day, but you know, we always just take care of your folks. Like whether it's your customers, whether it's your employees, whether it's your business partners, like put, you know, service to them first, and then always be driving forward on the mission. And I find that always ends up with the most ethical solution.
Great answers. Thank you.
All right, everybody. I think that's going to do it. That's all the questions we have for you. We just wanted to say thank you for your time. I know everybody definitely appreciated everything that you had to say, and I know you're all busy, so it's very, we don't take it that lightly. We really appreciate you coming here and imparting some wisdom on us. Absolutely.
You're welcome back anytime.
And if y'all didn't get any of your questions answered tonight, please feel free to email me and I'll relay those questions to our panelists and get a response back to you as soon as we can. Again, thank you panelists for doing this. This is our first ever event for Vibe here at TCU. And we hope to have you back again and maybe in person next time. But yes, again, thank y'all so much.